So this is the nearly final product of the ballasting and weathering of the rails. Before I show you how I got to this stage, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to West Hill Wagon Works, my channel sponsor. A link to their website will be in the description below, so feel free to check them out and use Wardle Road 5 for a 5% discount. So if you've been following along with some of my streams, you would have seen that in one of more recent streams I've been working on this 4 foot by 1 foot diorama. The track plan is rather simple, although I just wanted to give a shout out quickly to David from Cottesmore, who's very kindly sent me over some more electrofrog points. So what I think I'm actually going to do, the idea of this was just to have a kind of a basic track plan, just to bring trains in and out and just to demonstrate different scenic ideas and stuff with any products that I get sent. So it comes out of a tunnel mouth here, which will go into a small fiddle yard, and then you've got these two sort of sidings with a sort of reverse siding back here. I've also picked up 3 Acura scale buffers, so hope to get them in once the track's powered up. But yeah, one of the first things I wanted to do actually, now I've got these new points, was to put this one in here and extend this just a little bit out this way, just to allow for an 08 or something to sit in this sort of siding area here. And then this will probably be some kind of sand buffer, sorry. So yeah, if the 08 can sit in here, that'll be parked up nicely, doesn't have to do too much. I think down this side here, I plan to have a fueling point or something. Again, as you can see, I've started weathering the track, but we'll go into that into more detail once we've replaced this point. So first things first is to get on with that. So as you would have seen from that last clip, that point is now fixed in place. I've also added cork underlaying this piece of track here. It was just a spare piece that I actually took out this section, so it's already been sort of partially weathered on the sleepers. So all I've got to do now is take this piece here, which is still loose, the cork stuck down, put some droppers on here to the board underneath, and then I think we're good to go. Right, so that's that piece of track there in now. So I've got a sort of a small siding, which I'm probably going to make into some kind of disused, just gives a bit more operational interest for the diorama. And as you can see, it's not very long, but just makes it a bit more interesting for the shot when it's coming out the tunnel. So what's next to do is fit the droppers to the bottom of the track. As you can see there's 2 holes ready to be soldered onto the bottom here. So let's get on with that. There, we've now got the track all soldered up. I'm doing it with black to the back of the rail, back of the board. So we're just going to poke them 2 through here and get this piece of track fed in to join up onto the other one. So as you can see here, I've got the 2 wires soldered onto the bottom of the rails at the end. We're doing it with black to the back of the board. So all that's left now to do is to get this onto the end here, which will get that insulating rail on as well. This is where they don't want to go on at the same time. One and 2 like that, push that down, line it up, and that's good to go. So as you've probably seen in the corner of a couple of the clips, I will be using some Acura scale buffers. Now originally I used the Pico ones and painted them, or the Hornby ones and painted them, but after watching Cottesmore's video on them, I decided to get them. They're about £6 each. I think I got these off eBay, and I'm not going to be using any of the extra detailing accessories as there's not that much space behind the buffer. But the 2 wires go onto 2 springs. I'm not sure if you see that too well on the camera. Yeah, the 2 springs there and there, and they touch onto the rail, so there's no need to put droppers through the track or anything. And if I just pan over to the left here, all you've got to do is pretty much place it into the position that you want and push it down once you're happy with the position you've got it. So next up, we're going to have a look at weathering this point. So for the weathering of this point, as you can see along here, I've actually taken some tips off Tim from the scrap line. Now, I'm not saying this is the right way to do it, but he told me a couple of techniques to use, and I've kind of just tried to adapt them to to what I think would look good on this diorama. I'm not claiming to be a weathering expert, but what I've done here is I've used dark brown rust tracks and some medium rust for the rails. So this dark brown I'll firstly put on a coat over the sleepers, then this brown here I will use for the rails, and this white here will create this sort of weathered effect on some of the sleepers that you can see throughout the diorama. So let's get on with that. So as you can see here, I've now painted the whole point in the dark rust, the rust tracks, the dark brown colour, and I'm now just going to go over with a track rubber and just take off any of that paint before it dries on the top. I'll then go over it afterwards with a cotton mud and some IPA to remove all the bits I missed on the inside of the rails, and we'll let that dry and come back to do the track. Right, so as you can see here, the track has now dried a fairly dark brown colour, which would have matched these originally before I'd weathered them. So next what I'm going to want to do is get a super thin tiny brush. I also use the medium rust. I'll put some here on the board. You actually see it's a super light colour. However, when it dries a lot darker than that. So don't be fooled by the colour of it. And then what I'm going to want to do is just go along the rails here with this orange colour. Don't worry too much if you get it on the sleepers. Just try your best to keep it away from them. But as you can see there already, that is a super bright orange. If I get the track rubber and just take that layer off the top, it's already a lot harder to see, but I'll get a camera angle in a minute of it slightly lower down, and then I'm just going to go along here and paint all the sides this light rust colour, and when it dries it will dry a lot less shiny and it won't be as obvious, but it just adds an extra little bit of detail to your rails. So hopefully here you can see the difference. There, the rails haven't been painted on the side yet with the light rust colour, whereas here, all along this side, as this is going to be the viewing point from this side, the rails have. So I'm just going to let that dry, and hopefully we'll come back shortly and it will look a little bit less shiny like the rails on this side. But as I say, it just takes away from that sort of shiny silver colour that's left from the rails. So a little bit of an improvement, and then we'll get the IPA out. See, the rust has slowly started to dry a nice matte colour. You can see there where the puddle of it still hasn't dried, but the stuff on the rails has already, which is brilliant, which means I can now work on the next bit, which is going to be filling in these gaps. Now I've got a couple of concrete sleepers. I've also got a few of the ones off this spare piece of track at the end here that have already been weathered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace two here with the concrete ones, and then the two gaps here with the weathered sleepers, just to give it a bit more interest, as if they've come back here and had to replace a couple of sleepers with the slightly more modern ones. So I'm just going to fit them and I'll be back in a second. A little while longer, as you can see, and all of the paint now has dried. Just going over it just before this clip to make sure all the rails are fairly clean. Now if I pan over to the point, this is the area we're going to be working on next. And as you can see here, I've got some sleepers slightly more weathered than the other. This was a tip I picked up from Tim from the scrap line again. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get some white paint, a brush. This is just a very old brittle brush. Then I'm going to get some white here on the end of the brush, wipe it off so there's virtually nothing on it, and I'm going to dry brush over the top of these sleepers. And you can see already that adds a lot more detail, and it really picks out the detail of the sleepers. Now I'm probably not the best at doing this, as this is the first time I've ever really attempted anything to do with sleeper weathering. Normally I just put the track down, ballast it, and weather the whole lot all in one, but I thought this time I'll try and go that extra mile to make it a little bit better. If you're not happy with it, you can just pretty much rub it off straight away. But yeah, the aim is to not get any big lumps of paint on it. So if I just pick out a sleeper, like so. Now if I take you over the top of it, you can see there where all the various bits of detail has been picked out. I'll take you even closer, you can see lots of detail from the sleepers. But yeah, I'm just going to do this on the rest of this piece. As I mentioned before, this piece has already been done. So I'm just going to finish off this point all the way up to there. As you can see, it's weathered on that side onwards. Finish weathering this up and then we'll have a look at some ballasting. So while I let that paint dry on that point I've just installed, I'm going to start ballasting this particular section of track. It's all ready to go, it's all been weathered and all the rails have been painted. So the two ballasts I'm going to choose between are the 4mm Legacy ballast and Wardle Scenics extra fine dark grey. You get 1 kilo of that. So huge thanks to those guys for sending that out to me. And what I'm going to do is, just because I particularly like some of the colouring in here, I'm going to actually mix the two of these to get a really nice blend, and then I'm going to apply it to the sleepers. So just to quickly run you through all the things you're going to need if you're going to copy my bodge way of ballasting, but you're going to need a pot to mix the two ballasts. Well, that's what I'm going to need. Some washing up liquid / water mix to soak the ballast, and to glue the ballast we're going to use WWS track ballast glue. So again, thanks to them for sending me this stuff to have a look at. And we're going to give this a test. So first of all, we're going to mix the ballast. Now I'm going to put the pot there. This pot's got a nice lip on the end of it as well, so it means that when it comes to tapping the ballast in, I can funnel it neatly out of that. So that's about half of the pot of Legacy stuff, and we're going to mix that in with some of the WWS stuff. Now this should be more than enough ballast really to do this whole diorama plus a load more, so if necessary I can put this mix back into another pot and use it on a different occasion. But I'm just going to use the bottom of the paintbrush to mix the two colours, just so we get a nice even blend like so. So you can see there, got a nice mix of both the colours now, which also obviously adds to that extra bit of realism. So we're going to start on this piece of track here. Now when I'm doing this I've got to remember, of course, that I'm going to need to put the Acura scale buffers back in place here. Got to remember that I'm going to be putting the Acura scale buffers back in here. So just something to keep an eye on. Make sure I don't put the ballast too high or anything around the end of these rails, as I want that to sit nice and flat on that. So to start with, I don't need to do anything with wetting the track yet, we're just going to get the ballast on. So for this, I'm going to gently tap any excess after this. You can always hoover up, as long as your hoover's clean, and empty it back into the pot. It's easier to put more down to start with and then just hoover the excess up, then put less and having to keep adding to it. So next of all, use a paintbrush roughly the width of the track and the sleepers. I'm just going to gently drag it across the top like that, and this is just going to get all the initial larger areas of it to spread out a bit more and give me a rough idea of how spread this ballast is. As you can see, there's quite a collection of it in the middle here that may have put slightly too much. Also just sweep that to the end and collect it and reuse it. And then along the bank here I like to just build up a bit of an edge to the track, so I'll do that on both sides. It also means that any ballast that's started going a bit too far away, you can keep it in all one area. I'm then going to want to use the bottom of the paintbrush try and remove as much of the ballast from the top of the sleepers as I can. Now there are some areas here where it might need a bit of assistance. So I'm just going to go over the top of it again, remove any extra layers of it. You can start to see already that the sleepers are coming through, all the sleepers that are weathered are starting to reappear, and we're getting a fairly nice bank of ballast on each side. So I'm just going to finish this bit off and then we'll come to gluing it. So there's that piece of track all ballasted. I'm fairly happy with the coverage on that. I'm not too worried about how good it looks, as this is not a main line. This is just going to be some part of a diorama that I'm going to weather over the top of, and shouldn't be too obvious whether I've done a good job with the ballast or not, but I'm pleased with that. So next of all, I'm going to get my washing up liquid and water mix, and I'm just going to soak all of the ballast, make sure that it's got all the water, so when the glue goes into it, it breaks up nicely. Then I'm going to want to get my Wardle Scenic ballasting glue, snip the top off. I'm going to give it a good shake. And now I should just be able to pour this on, make sure all the areas are completely soaked through. And the water should now help, and the water and the soap should now help that glue absorb into the ballast. Remember, it dries clear, so don't worry too much as to what it looks like at the moment. So we're just going to give that a few minutes and we'll come back and see how well the glue's been absorbed into the ballast. It's been about 10-15 minutes at the moment, and as you can see, the glue is slowly starting to sink into the ballast, and hopefully once it's dried we'll be able to see how nice the blend of the two different ballasts look. I've just started on this piece of straight track behind it, putting the ballast in. I've also found actually just getting a ruler and just kind of shuffling up the ends like that, give you a much neater edge. So that's what I'm going to try for that one compared to this one where it's a bit all over the place. I know it looks a bit messy at the moment, but hopefully once it's dried, I think this is going to look quite nice. As I said, I'm not really going for anything too fancy and neat. It's going to kind of be a rundown siding area. So next thing to do is to spray this one down and glue this one as well. Something else I just wanted to add in quickly that Tim from the scrap line reminded me. When it comes to weathering the sleepers, make sure you use paint rather than the weathering powder for this stage anyway, because as you can see here, if you were to use paint and then you put this glue and water all over the top of it, powder, sorry, and you put glue and water all over the top of it, it's going to wash away. So make sure you use paint rather than the powder. The powder can be added as a final weathering touch, providing you don't have to put any more glue or water over the top of it. Where we are at the moment. As you can see, I'm avoiding doing the points. I'm going to do all of them at once just to make sure I do a more thorough and careful job on them. So I've just started working through all the straight bits. So the next bit I'm going to do is this piece in between here and then this long piece at the back here. Then we're going to let it dry and come on to the points. Quite a lot later now in the evening, and as you can see, we now have power. So I ignore this because the flashing LEDs don't like the camera. But as you can see, we've now got power all set up, and that's just running through this little connector block here. So I can just plug in the layout and unplug it as I wish when I'm working on it. You can see the 66 that I won from Westhill Wagon Works, who are funnily enough now my channel sponsor. The Freightliner in the latest livery to be released. A little driver in there as well as the cab lights fitted at each end. Yeah, as I was coming on to, the ballast is now mostly dried up. I'm actually quite surprised how quickly this glue set. In fact, all I've got left to do now is this point, and that point, which I will start in the morning, and then we'll get on to some ballast weathering, and then I think that'll be it for this video. So once I've done these points tomorrow, I'm probably going to have to take my time a little bit more with them, as I don't want to completely wreck them with the glue and the ballast. So I'll take my time when doing those three, and then I can start thinking about what I want to do scenery wise. I know I want to have like an embankment up the back here, and then somewhere down here I want like Gauge Parkway has, with someone doing some fly tipping or something. Got loads of little bits and pieces from Goodwood Scenics to try out. So as you can see from this clip here, I did have a go to start ballasting some points, just to see if I could think of any techniques and stuff. As you can see here, it's actually done a really good job. I've just got this little bit at the end. I kind of got a bit scared of doing it towards the end here, so I still need this little section to do, and a couple of bits along the side here. But yeah, that brings us on to this point here, and then so that's that one done. This one's all completed, and all that's left to do now is the rear half of it that's going to go into the fiddle yard. So in this part of the video, we're going to focus on this point here. Now you've seen earlier on me mixing up the ballast. I've got the same mix as I did earlier, and quite simply, I'm going to make sure I've got this area clear. I was using the cotton buds and IPA just to give the track a clean, make sure there's no paint and stuff on it. And I'm just going to funnel some of this ballast now. I never really know what to do when it comes to the mechanisms, but as I did on this point down here, I just kind of worked around it as much as I could, and I haven't had any issues. So hopefully I have the same luck with this one. I don't want to go too heavy on the ballast in between here, because obviously I don't want it encroaching on any of the point mechanism. I'm just going to do just a light sprinkle over the top of that, and then come down the back here for slightly more heavy duty go at the ballast. So that's pretty much as much ballast as I think I'm going to need on that section. So now I'm going to, same technique as before, get the paintbrush, and I'm going to want to start by sweeping away. I'll start from the middle outwards, just so I can get any loose bits of ballast that, as I say, are stuck in the mechanism out the way first. This is the first time I've actually ever filmed myself doing ballasting on points, so I do apologise if I'm not doing it quite right, or to a good enough standard, but now I'm going to be careful not to put any glue in here, because I want to leave this mechanism in here as clear as possible. Just going to do as I did before as well with the ruler, and just give this a nice neat enough edge. Just take some off those sleepers. Any gaps I can come back and fill back in later on, that's not an issue. If I feel it's too high, and then I'm just going to give it a quick tap. Make sure all the sleepers are clear and the mechanism's clear, and now we're good to go and spray it and glue it. I'm going to give this a good coat. I want to make sure the glue really sinks into this. And like before, I'm going to apply it all over. Now the slightly trickier bits will be in between the track. So I'm going to try and do this as delicately as possible. Trying to keep it off the sleepers as much as possible where the mechanism is. Of course, if there's any on the rails, that can just be wiped off afterwards, and I think that's most of it. So gonna let that dry and come back in a minute. So it's the next day now, and as you can see, the ballast here has actually dried really well. Give you a close-up. Not too much on the sleepers at all down here. Not too much on the sleeves at all here. There's a few places like around here that I need to clean up, but that won't take too long at all. So yeah, the ballast and the ballast glues actually worked really well. I'm really pleased with the mix and the colour. I think it adds for a bit more interest. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Next I think we'll be doing some weathering of the track, and I'm going to start the scenic work along the back here as well, and I'm also going to start doing some of the scenic work down that gap there. I'm going to be using some of Wardle Scenic's weathering powder, so I will also leave a link to their website in the description. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to leave me any feedback in the comment section, and hopefully I'll join you in the next one if you found this interesting. Cheers.